You're listening to the Cycling Podcast at the Vuelta a España in association with Rafa. Today we are in Pozo, Alcón.
Fran, I'm a bit sad. You and I have come to the end of our Vuelta journey.
It's not the end, it's a beginning of another section of our life where we will keep this week dearly in our mind.
Very philosophical, very philosophical. It's late Friday afternoon, well, early Friday evening now. It's roasting hot here in Pozo, Alcón.
Yeah, Pozo, Alcón. I was trying to, realize where we were. Exactly, we are in Pozo, Alcón. Probably one of the smallest, if not the smaller town we are visiting in this Vuelta, and that's great because you can feel the environment is really special here. Every now and then in the Vuelta we visit a small village that is taking the opportunity to host the Vuelta with both hands, and you could feel it everywhere, from the press buffet that was really good to the presence of public on the finish line, which was huge. There were a lot of fans screaming for the riders to come, and that passion is great to see. And we don't see it that often in big cities, for example, where everything seems colder. Of course, it's bigger, but colder. And I, for one, prefer this kind of smaller shows where one feels the public much closer to the race.
Nothing about this Vuelta has been cold, Fran. It's been very hot all the way. And the racing was hot again today. That's Fran Reyes, by the way. And the reason Fran and I have come to the end of our journey is because, Fran, you're going off to a friend's wedding, I think, at the weekend. So you're leaving me solo. I'll be catching up with Daniel Freeb tomorrow. But I've got to get through these difficult weekend stages before handing the podcasting baton over to Richard Moore when the race resumes on Tuesday, and you will be back on duty then. But stage 7, today's course from Puerto-Lumbreras to Pozo Alcón was absolutely stunning to look at once again. Almost nothing in the way. It was just dramatic scenery, beautiful looking roads. Some of the road surfaces looked quite grippy, but those kind of real 1980s style road stage racing roads.
Yeah, if I can give a couple of notes of the route of today. First one, Puerto-Lumbreras, stage start, has two of the best sandwich making places. I was going to say of Spain, but I'm going to go further to say in the face of earth. Indeed, yesterday I had lunch in one of those, El Bocadillón de Jamón. Both places are one in front of the other, and well, I mean, it's cheap, it's big, and it's really, really, really tasty. So it's also in crossroads because from Puerto-Lumbreras you can join 3 different motorways, one going to Granada, one going to Almería, and the final one going to Murcia and Valencia. So listeners, if you ever come close to Puerto-Lumbreras, please take advantage of the occasion to try these sandwiches. The first kilometers out of Puerto-Lumbreras were not that beautiful because they were held in the motorway for pretty much 20 kilometers. But until after that, we entered the poorest, more depressed parts of Almería, Granada and Jaén. And those are, as you said, dramatic sceneries with roads that have never been really taken care of since they were built, and that makes for some beautiful, peaceful riding and for some great racing as we could see today.
And you mentioned the buffet here. We will get to the stage in just a moment, but the thing that caught my attention at the buffet was the breadcrumbs with pork, which was really delicious. Difficult to explain. They weren't crispy breadcrumbs; they were kind of soft breadcrumbs with some Spanish pork. Very, very tasty. The stage itself then was won by Tony Gallopin in very impressive style with a late move that Richard Moore on Twitter said was reminiscent of Jelle Nijdam, the Dutch rider from the late 80s, who made a kind of trademark of these late bursts in the final 1 or 2 kilometres. I think a better, more modern reference is we've seen the likes of Filippo Pozzato win Milan-San Remo in a similar way. We've seen Fabian Cancellara win races in a similar way. It was an extremely impressive victory by the AG2R rider. He's won a Tour stage, of course, but this was his first Vuelta stage win.
And in Spain, we have also a reference, Pepe Recio, rider from Calme from the 80s, and even in Spain. Nowadays, not a lot of people says that, but I try to keep the memory alive and saying that someone has won a la Recio.
A la Recio, yeah, I remember the name. I can't say I remember seeing him do it. Would he have won Vuelta stages like that?
Yes, he has won several Vuelta stages, and famously he was the guy accompanying Pedro Delgado on that breakaway to the Estelerias Dick when they beat, the whole Spanish peloton beat Robert Miller for the victory of the 1985 Vuelta, was it?
Of course.
That was Pepe Recio.
Of course, yes, the famous ambush that cost Robert Miller the Vuelta. So the breakaway today was 7 riders: Michael Woods of EF Education First, Floris de Tier of Lotto NL Jumbo, Edward Ravasi of UAE, Oscar Rodriguez of Euskadi, Alex Aranburu of Caja Rural, Nicola Conchi of Trek, and Alexis Gouger of AG2R. Well, it was all looking okay for them until the peloton really brought them back under control on the approach to the final climb, the Alto de Seal, the third category climb. But it looked tough, that climb. It was not an easy one, and once again a lot of climbing on a day laughably called a flat day. I mean, we were speculating that it might come down to a sprint, but absolutely no chance. There was actually a crash at the bottom because everyone was so keen to get into that climb in a good position. Woods then was alone at the front with 16 kilometres to go and around about 4 kilometres of the climb left, but his lead, well, it melted away and he was caught with just under 13 kilometres to go. Then Luis Mas of Caja Rural, no relation of Enric Mas?
No relation at all. I mean, they both are from the Balearic Islands, but they are not related. There is no parenthood.
They just share a surname. Luis Mas was away. He was looking pretty strong for a while. And then on the descent, well, there were all sorts of problems. Dan Martin had a puncture. Damien Howson had a crash. Michał Kwiatkowski in the green jersey as leader of the points competition had a crash as well. The group caught Mas. Then Jesus Harada of Cofidis went away, and with maybe 2.5 kilometres to go, Gallopin rode up to Harada and then dropped him and held off what was left of the bunch, finished ahead of Peter Sagan and Alejandro Valverde, who were just 5 seconds behind. Kwiatkowski in the end lost 30 seconds, and so he slips down from second place overall. Rudy Mollard still in red, Valverde now up to second, Buchmann third, Simon Yates fourth, Gallopin now fifth, Kwiatkowski sixth. Valverde also takes the green jersey from Kwiatkowski, but Kwiatkowski will wear the white combined jersey tomorrow, which Valverde is already leading. And Luis Angel Mate didn't score any points today, but is still in the King of the Mountains lead. Now, it's a slightly different episode of the Cycling Podcast this evening. We're obviously covering the Vuelta here in Spain, but we've also got an interview with Rick Delaney, who is the boss of the Aqua Blue team, which announced that it will be stopping with immediate effect. Rick Delaney had not given any reaction to any media, but he spoke to Richard Moore this morning, and we will play that in the second half of the podcast.
From grand tours to group rides, the Champs-Élysées to coffee shops, Rafa exists to celebrate the world's most beautiful sport.
Thank you to Rafa for sponsoring the Cycling Podcast. It's that time of the week. The Pedaler de Charme poll is open, and there are 4 riders that you've nominated who are in line to win the prestigious Pedaler de Charme t-shirt. Luis Angel Mate has been nominated not just for getting into the breaks and wearing the King of the Mountains jersey so proudly, but also for putting his gel wrappers in his pocket and being very charming. Pierre Rolland has been nominated for being very gracious about his former teammate Ben King when Ben King won the stage above Granada a few days away, and for being very charming. Nicholas Schultz, who is the subject of our Kilometre Zero, which was released this morning, he has been nominated for being very charming in that episode, because he talked so eloquently about his journey from Australia to France to the Netherlands and to Spain in search of a World Tour contract, which he has achieved, and he will be joining Mitchelton Scott next year. He was a really entertaining guy to listen to, so check that out if you can. And Peter Sagan, the world champion, for reverting to the role of teammate and doing a run back to the team car to collect water bottles for his teammates. Always good to see that the biggest stars are not above helping out their teammates on a hot day. So you can vote for whoever you prefer by going to our Twitter page at cycling_podcast and vote for your favourite.
Can I influence the listeners? Luis Angel Mate, I worked with him as a press officer for 3 years, and hence I got to know him personally and develop quite a good friendship. And I can tell you that he is one of the persons I've ever met who is more concerned with the nature and the preservation of the planet Earth. And what I loved most about these concerns is that he effectively takes action for it. And what he did of keeping gel wraps on his pocket, it's something that he does every day, and with every little gesture there is that can help.
Well, just like yesterday, Fran, the action was all crammed into the last sort of 25 kilometres of the race, and it was really full on again, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we can say that this first week of the Vuelta has been very entertaining, even if there is this feeling in the press room among the colleagues that the field of stars of this Vuelta España is not really stunning. Of course, we are lacking most of the riders who were protagonists at the Tour de France, but still, the quality of the racing, I think it has been significant, it has been remarkable. And the action, of course, was condensed in the final hour of the racing, but still I would say that a final hour, 1 hour of entertainment is quite good compared to earlier years where the steep uphill finish made for only 10 minutes of show worth watching. Today, I for one was pretty amused with the last 40 minutes of race, and that's pretty good.
Yeah, and the way the race has kind of gone, we're 7 days in, and if you had to say who is going to win the Vuelta, I personally couldn't pick a name at the moment. I mean, it looks so open. There is no one outstanding favourite at the moment, and the way the stages have been, we haven't really been given much of a hint of who, what the kind of the ranking order is of the climbers yet. We'll have to wait until Sunday for that.
Exactly. It's been a week with a lot of moves that haven't revealed a dominant rider nor a dominant team. Everything has been decided on strategy more than on strength. So I'd say we are yet quite far from knowing who the actually strongest riders of the race are. The guy who had given the best feelings, at least from my perspective, had been Emmanuel Buchmann, along with George Bennett. But I am not quite positive whether this Sunday in La Covatilla, first mountaintop finish, proper hard, we are going to see the same names shining, because today, for example, we saw Nairo Quintana, Miguel Ángel López also very attentive and very strong.
Yeah, everyone was keeping a close eye on what was going on. George Bennett was looking very lively indeed on the climb. Buchmann, to me, is the kind of the surprise of the week, just how well he's got through without anything going wrong. Very sort of performance in the first week that you think, well, this guy is going to ride himself even further into contention. But of course, everything can come undone when they hit the harder climbs. What did you make of Tony Gallopin though, and his late move? I mean, it was perfectly judged, wasn't it?
Yeah, Tony Gallopin is a very smart rider. I mean, he has a wide range of qualities, but the one I pick as the main one is how much of race intelligence he has. He's come to this Vuelta with the stated aim of win a stage, of course, because that's the aim every team comes with to a Grand Tour, but also he's trying to make a good GC because he wants to become a Grand Tour rider that can contest general classification, and the Vuelta a España, which is basically the Grand Tour of discovery and experimentation, is the perfect platform, the perfect scenery to try and find his limits as a stage racing rider. Today he judged it perfectly, the timing, and he nailed it. Surprised everyone. Of course, there was not a team that was able to really work. Only Bora tried to do so, but didn't have the numbers as to be really effective at chasing Gallopin. So, nice one for him.
And 2 French victories in 2 days. I mean, the French teams there, Cofidis, had a really good week with Mate in the King of the Mountain jersey and in the breaks, and Buhani's victory yesterday, and AG2R, who, you know, we have kind of got away with not being criticised for their lack of wins in the World Tour, because obviously they have Romain Bardet as the star for the Tour de France, but they, I think, were only on 1 World Tour win before today, this season.
I think it was 2, but the point, it remains the same. I mean, they are not a really winning team, but I'd say that the impact they have on the races and the quality of their GC riders, because there is always one AG2R rider up there in the GC in every World Tour stage race, makes up for that. And also about the great role that French cycling is playing in this Vuelta, don't forget we have a French leader, Rudy Mollard, for the 3rd French team contesting this race, which is Groupama FDJ.
Le Vuelta what's Espagne, of course.
Les Tours d'Espagne, bien sûr.
There we go.
Chute à l'arrière du peloton, cycling podcast team car at the back of the pack, please.
Talking of France, that was the voice of a Frenchman, Seb Piquet, race radio at the Tour de France, reminding me to tell you that you can claim a Harry's shaving set for £3.95. It's a free shaving set, but you pay £3.95 to get it delivered to your door if you live in the UK. And Fran, you have magnificent sideburns, and it must be very important to you to keep them very even and keep them looking as fine as they are, especially with an important wedding to go to this weekend. So we gave you a Harry's razor, and what were your impressions?
Well, mainly what I loved about the Harry's racers, I don't feel like I am a real star as to make any endorsements, but well, now that you give me the chance at the platform to be an influencer for the listeners of the podcast, I'm going to tell you that what I enjoyed most about the Harry's racer was the experience, because the packaging is quite neat. I'm sure that my girlfriend, who is a box lover, will appreciate the box where the Harry's racer came in, and also there it comes with a lot of small treats that make for a different experience when shaving.
You're perfectly symmetrical there, Fran. You've kept these wonderful sideburns looking absolutely lustrous. You may not consider yourself the star to give an endorsement, but the sideburns are a star. If you want to look like Fran, then you can order your Harry's razor set, and you will get the weighted ergonomic German engineered handle, 5 precision engineered blades with lubricating strip, a rich lathering shave gel, and a travel blade cover, and that is all for £3.95, and you can get that by going to harrys.com/cycling. That's Harrys, HARRYS.com/cycling. So Fran, until next time, it's been an absolute pleasure to travel around the southern part of Spain and visit your hometown and places you know so well, and to hear your insights into the Vuelta and Spanish cycling in general. I'll miss you over the next 2 weeks, but rest assured I will be listening to the podcast when it's you and Richard.
I'll miss you during the next year, up until the next Vuelta gives us the chance to work again together and podcast like kings.
The Cycling Podcast is supported by Science in Sport.
Whether you're grinding up the French Alps or just taking your mates on around a local loop, Science in Sport Rego Rapid Recovery Plus will help you recover faster after your ride, so you're ready to go again the next day.
Science in Sport, fueled by science.
As ever, you can get 25% off all Science in Sport products by going to scienceinsport.com, and when you fill your basket and have reached the checkout, enter the code SISCP25. A big thanks, of course, to Science in Sport for sponsoring the cycling podcast. Now we're going to turn our attention away from the Vuelta a España and to a story which has been rumbling on over the course of this week, and that is the demise of the Irish Pro Continental team Aqua Blue Sport. Now, Rick Delaney is a wealthy businessman from Cork in Ireland who founded the team at the start of 2017, and last year they got a wild card for the Vuelta and they raced well here, with Stefan Denifil winning a stage at Los Machucos. Prior to that, Larry Warbass had won the US Road Race Championships and a stage of the Tour de Suisse, and Denifil had won the Tour of Austria. But despite that success, the team found wildcard places in World Tour races hard to come by this year. At the start of 2018, they signed an equipment, sponsorship and supply deal with 3T and were committed to riding the 3T Strada Aero road bike, which has disc brakes and, uniquely in the pro peloton, only one chainring, typically with 44 teeth, and a set of rear sprockets with a much wider range than is usual on a road bike, often from around 9 to 32 teeth. Anyway, it had been reported that there had been problems with the reliability of the bikes, and earlier this summer a drop chain cost Mark Christian a place in what turned out to be the winning break during a stage of the Tour de Suisse. After that, Delaney wrote on his now deleted Twitter feed, "Just wanted to say what a privilege it was to be behind Mark Christian. So strong, only to be dropped by mechanical number 4698 this season. This lab rat thing is now costing results. Sorry again, Mark." With World Tour rides few and far between this year, Aqua Blue began discussions with Sniper Cycling about a merger. The company owns Verandas Willems Krellen, the Belgian team directed by former Tour of Flanders winner Nick Nuyens, and whose star rider is cyclocross world champion Wout van Aert. At the start of this month, Aqua Blue issued a press release saying a merger was a done deal. Shortly afterwards, the statement disappeared and Sniper Cycling issued a strong denial. This Monday it was revealed Aqua Blue would disband. Then came a blow to the riders who had been selected for the Tour of Britain, which starts this Sunday. They would not be riding that race, a perfect opportunity for riders to showcase their talents and attract a new employer, and it was taken away from them. We gather the riders had wanted to explore the possibility of riding in unbranded kit or on different bikes to get around contractual obligations, but in the end that didn't work out, and the team's place was offered to Team Wiggins instead. All week there's been speculation about how the team's demise came about, and all week Delaney has been silent, but today he spoke to the Cycling Podcast. So let's hear from Rick Delaney, who was speaking to Richard Moore this morning.
Well, Rick, the big news broke at the start of the week that the team was not going to survive into next year, and then came the bombshell that was it, that they wouldn't be riding the Tour of Britain. Can you explain how that came about? The suddenness of that took a lot of people by surprise. I mean, teams fold in cycling all the time, but it's quite unusual for a team to stop while the season is still going on.
I think I need to start at the beginning to get to the end. The answer to that question isn't in the action, it's the lead up to that. So if I go right back to 2 years ago when we set up Aqua Blue Sport, and we spoke to the UCI and we told the UCI what it is we wanted to do and what we wanted to try and achieve. We spoke to race organisers, we told them what it was we wanted to do, what we wanted to achieve, and we got the green light, and we got the seal of approval, and everybody told us they thought it was really clever, good idea. And you'd get our backing, and then we would disclose what riders we were looking at and what riders we were hoping to sign. They felt with the riders you have, you should get a really good race programme, and more importantly, what you're trying to do is really good for the sport, blah, blah, blah. So we said, okay, let's proceed. So we applied for the licence, we did that. Year one, we went and met with the ASO, we met with the Italian lads, the Giro boys, we met with multiple single race programme or race organisers guys, and got reasonably positive feedback from all of them, saying that, again, they liked what we did, they really liked the jersey, they liked the squad, and last year we got, in my opinion, a pretty good race start, and to top the year off, we got the Vuelta. And you would imagine, on the success of year one, you'd imagine that should roll into year two. So on the back of that success, we obtained a complete equipment sponsor from one company, which at the time seemed very exciting. That particular company indicated that they were going to be very supportive of the team. It was innovative technology, and whilst the product may not be at the standard it is now, and this is going back to last January, by the time we get into the season it would develop, and they've got some exciting products coming online, and the future looked really, really good. Also, we were assured we would get 2x bikes, and these bikes will be delivered to us on or before September, and we'd have the best of both worlds. And we were going to mutually sell equipment on our e-commerce site. They were going to sell the team bike on the e-commerce side, and it all sounded like the perfect marriage. And then, probably January of last year, when we started visiting race organisers, it just wasn't the same feeling as the year before. And we went to the RCS, and I left that meeting thinking we were definitely doing Milan de San Remo. Yes, we weren't going to get the Giro. They were going to come back to us and confirm or deny whether we were going to get Strade Bianchi. But yes, he felt there were at least 3 or 4 of their races we would get. He said if we wanted to do the Giro, we'd really need to be talking about doing the Giro that time last year for next season. We said, look, listen, the Giro, we understand the Giro is gone this year. And we said, wonderful. We left that meeting full of life, full of joy. This is fantastic. We're going to get these races. We then continued to contact them for weeks on end with no dialogue, nothing, zero. Complete radio silence, and then to have it announced on social media who have been invited to the races, and we didn't get any. So that really was the beginning of it. This is going to be a difficult year. We met with the ASO, and again got all the right feedback about the tour. The tour looked very positive. Obviously, they didn't tell us you're doing the tour. The feedback was very, very positive, and the body language. And again, we love what you're doing. It's all fantastic. It's all great. And again, we didn't get the tour. But not only did we not get the tour, we didn't get a whole pile of other stuff either. And on top of all that, our staff and riders are having issues with equipment. And it's no secret. So I'm not speaking out of turn here, or I could be sued for damages. This isn't my opinion. This is go onto social media and look what our staff and riders have been tweeting for the last 12 months. I personally have been under enormous pressure from riders and staff complaining about product they're using. That puts and places the management of the team under savage pressure, in that we are contractually bound for the next 2.5 years to this particular supplier. So what do? That particular supplier has never attended a bike race, never showed any interest in the team whatsoever. The frame or the bike they gave us, our exclusive colours that we gave them, was available for sale all around the world before it was available on our website. So clearly, they had no interest in the team. Zero interest. From the get-go, I'd say 2 weeks into it, they said to themselves, oh God, what have we done? So, in my opinion, they spent the next 8 months frustrating us. We went to Switzerland, and our mechanic, Sam, after stage 3 or 4, was borrowing pads for disc brakes from other teams because we didn't have the stock. We had enormous problems with seat post shifting and didn't have a solution. We had a race organizer in Swiss on the second last stage told me personally, sort your bikes out. So I would have thought we would have had phenomenal support from that particular sponsor. We didn't get that support at all, and that put us in a very, very, very difficult position. It put me in a very difficult legal position, in that I now have got a product I'm committed to for 2.5 years that I'm not happy with the relationship, that we have a difference of opinion, and it's not working. So how do you exit? How do you divorce? So I started that divorce proceedings, and the strategy was merge with another team. I entered into negotiations with Sniper Cycling. I lie, they came to me. The team owner, a guy called Chris Company, came to see me in Monaco, told me he really liked what we were doing. He'd like to look at a merger, putting the two teams together. I explained to him I had no interest in a merger. But what I had an interest in is he coming on board with us, and in turn I would give him a percentage of the overall company, including the team and the website. So I'd say, you give us X, you give us your team, we'll take over the team, we'll take over the debts of the team, and we'll take the sponsors. But we will keep the shirt clean like we've always said we would. It would still be called Aqua Blue Sport, but Sniper Cycling would become the paying agent. Therefore, my contract with our current supplier would be terminated because we'd be in breach of contract. So the end of the year would come and I'm gone. We go across the Sniper. We're riding whatever product they currently ride, or whatever product they're contracted to ride. And the future looked bright. So these conversations went on with Sniper for 2.5 months. And during that 2.5 months, it's got to be the most frustrating negotiation process I have ever been through in my life. It was just a whole smokescreen of lie after lie after lie. And just to give you an idea, we did a press release saying that we're delighted that we've done a merger. We didn't just do that. We got a statement from Nick Noyers that afternoon. There are his words. And Nick Noyers that afternoon was on his way back to Belgium with our CEO sitting in the car with him, where they'd just been to see Nicky Terpstra, selling him the dream, telling Nicky this is what's happening. Andre Greipel, they went to Andre Greipel in the break during the tour and told Andre Greipel, we're merging with Aqua Blue. This is what we're doing. Come ride with us. And then they issued a press release saying they have no knowledge of any discussions and they're distancing themselves.
So when that press release came out, as far as you were concerned, had that been approved by them?
There are his words. That's his words, not my words. You look at that, read that press release, and you'll see there's a comment in there. Nick Doyle says he's really excited, blah, 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 blah. There are his words. We did the press release. 2 hours later, we get a telephone call from them telling us, take it down. We said, what are you talking about, take it down? And they said, we just think it's a bit premature. Well, you can't be premature. It's out in the public now. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I took it down. And then they did a press release. The minute we took it down, they did a press release saying, they're distancing ourselves. However, there are talks going on. Anyhow, to fast forward, this went on for another month and a half, to the point where I've invested €27,000 in legal fees, doing due diligence, answering their questions, every single thing you can imagine, we've done with them. And they'd come back on the 11th and a half hour. Let's say the deal is to be signed. The last deal was to be signed last Friday. So Friday just gone, they were supposed to sign. And again, 4:45, God, there's just one more thing we require. And we said, what in God's name? And we just said to them last Friday, lads, forget it. And then we all wake up on Monday morning and there's rumours that they're going to sign with Rompot. And now we all know that's confirmed. I know and you know and the whole industry knows that doesn't happen in a week. There's months of negotiating when you merge with someone, especially when there's multiple sponsors and there's multiple paying agents and rider contracts. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes weeks and weeks. So what they were doing here is playing me and playing Rompot. Or maybe playing Rompot, and if Rompot didn't fail, they had me as a plan B, because they couldn't go it alone. They lost a sponsor. So that obviously made us look like a complete bunch of idiots, to the point where I had spoken with staff and riders, told them this is done. This is done. Well, it's a done deal. Yeah, they're playing a few games, but it's done. I have no doubt it's done. These people couldn't be this honest. They couldn't possibly be playing games to this extent. So it has to be done. And then we all know what happened next.
Well, I was going to ask. I mean, so that brought things quite dramatically to a head, and that explains the suddenness of the announcement on Monday, and then the.
You realise I just got completely pissed off to the end, and it's not just that. It's the UCI. I went to the UCI 2 years ago looking for help, and they don't offer you any help. Nothing. No help whatsoever. All we want to know is how much money do you have? Where's the money coming from? What size is your bank guarantee? So we do all of that. And then we go to them during the mid-year. Can you help us with this contract? No. No. It's this contract or no contract. Yeah, but can we? No. Everything is no. Their first answer is no. Their second answer is no. Everything they do is no. We pulled the pin last Monday, and they're on us like a cheap suit. Anything we can do, getting us after our mobile numbers. Are you sure? Can we encourage you to continue racing? Blah, blah, blah. That's unbelievable.
What kind of help would you have wanted from the UCI before Monday?
Advice? No, well, it wasn't before Monday. It's during the last year and a half. We would contact the UCI looking for general advice. It was like trying to pull hen's teeth. They wouldn't give you advice. It was just really, really cumbersome. They're supposed to be the governing body. I also issued my frustration on the race invite process. I don't think for 1 minute that I or anybody else should just get a race invite and it should be handed to us by a race organizer who should have to qualify. There should be teams should go up, teams should go down. That's never going to happen. Never going to happen. And now I have no problem in telling you that it's all about money with race organisers. Tour de Suisse, we did it last year. We did very well. We won a stage. It cost us 20 grand. This year we did it again. It cost us another 20 grand. So I'm paying €20,000 for the privilege of investing 2.73 million a year. Then I have to pay these race organisers another 20 grand just to race their race. Amstel Gold, another 10 grand. It's a disgusting sport. This sport, forgive me, it's not a disgusting sport. The way it's run is disgusting. There's no greater feeling than sitting in a team car behind your team. It's goose pimples from head to toe, watching what it should be, the beautiful sport of bike racing. But everything else that goes with it is just rotten to the core.
I mean, Rick, the decision to pull the plug on the team on Monday, was that quite a sudden decision, or is that something you'd been thinking about for quite a while?
No, it wasn't. And there's all this nonsense that people saying it's premeditated and I did this and I employed Tom Timmerman as the axeman. It's garbage. It's not what happened at all. I had a choice. I had a choice to make. Either A, breach the contract and be sued for damages, or B, continue with our current equipment, or C, accept the offer that was made to me, which I can't tell you what it is for legal reasons, but there isn't anybody on planet Earth would have accepted the offer. And I thought, well, there's another option. There's one more option I have, and that's just pull down the shutters, because this is supposed to be enjoyable, this is supposed to be pleasurable, just call it a day, pull down the shutters. So I thought about it long and hard over the weekend, long and hard, all weekend long, and I woke up on Monday, 6 o'clock Monday morning, and I said, I'm going to pull the pin. Everybody seems to think this is an easy decision. I can tell you, I cried last Monday when I did this. This has been my passion and my dream for the last 2 years. So I didn't just do this at a whim. And these people on internet and people on social media saying I'm a cowboy and I'm this and I'm this. What a load of just, makes my blood boil. I spent millions, I invested millions in this sport. I've given 42 people jobs for the last 2 years. I have broke no contracts with anybody. All my staff are contracted, and in their terms and conditions that they sign every single year, it's within 1 month's termination. So they can leave me and I can leave them. Standard practice. And that's what's going to be executed. All my riders, every one of them, will be paid as per the contract year until the 31st of December. There are no other riders contracted other than 5 for next year. Of those 5 riders for next year, 2 of them, I believe, have already sought alternative arrangements, which leaves 3. And clearly, if those 3 riders on the 31st of December this year are unemployed and can obtain work, of course I'm going to do the right thing. But that's the reality of the bad deal I have done for people. I have done nothing wrong. Absolutely, I've honoured every single contract. There's nobody being stung. There's nobody not being paid. Every single contract has been honoured and is going to be honoured. And as I said, there are 3 riders. We re-signed 5 riders. 2 of them, I believe, have sought alternatives. 3 are left. I believe those 3 will find work very, very easily. But if they don't, I'll honour their contracts. Of course I will.
Rick, I mean, obviously you sound upset. The riders are upset, and they were upset by the manner in which they heard about the team folding.
And that's so no. Again, that is absolute rubbish. What do you do on Monday morning if you want to contact? If you wanted to contact 42 people on Monday morning, what would you do? You would send them an email, correct? You can't phone them all simultaneously, so I sent them an email, and then I waited 2 hours. So all riders and staff got emails, and I phoned the head DS, who I knew had a conference call at 10 o'clock, and that he would speak to all the staff on that conference call. And that's exactly what he did. I did not fire anybody or tell anybody we were terminating a team via social media. That is absolute rubbish.
That's been misreported then, because there was an email sent 2 hours before the message went on Twitter.
And look, listen, the other thing is, anybody who knows me, I mean, and I'm not just saying, people are talking about my ego. I don't have any ego. You know, I've spent every time we went to races, I would sleep with the riders in the same hotel. I slept on 1 beds with no air conditioning. I ate rice and I ate chicken just like they did. I got to know all my riders. I became friends of my riders. I don't have an ego. So for staff and Joe Public to say, he got out because his ego is too big, what a load of nonsense. Couldn't be so far removed from the truth.
Have you been able to speak to the riders this week at all?
I've spoken to some, yes. And some of the riders have spoken to me.
I mean, the riders have obviously been very aware of the equipment problems. I mean, in the end, the thing that we haven't spoken about is the business model and the online retailing. I mean, how had that gone? And is that something you plan to continue even now that the team has gone?
No, that is going to continue. What I'd love to do in all of this is come back unshackled. Because the biggest thing we did here is we sold our souls to a sponsor for 3 years. That was the biggest mistake. Had we not done that, we'd have had a bit of freedom. To the point where I actually had another bike frame guy was going to give us bikes for Tour of Britain. I couldn't do that, I'd have been sued. I had another bike for Britain.
It's been reported and denied by 3T that they threaten legal action. I mean, did they threaten legal action? Is that something you still fear?
That I can't comment, but what I can say, if we were in breach of contract, like any contract, I'm sure you would be sued for damages. I suppose the answer to the question is, I guess if we had breached the contract,
was it really not feasible to carry on and finish the season on those bikes?
That I can't answer, but what I can say, from my experience and from my perspective, it wasn't feasible to continue with that partner.
I mentioned the online shop. I mean, you know, when you launched, you had projections for the team becoming self-sustaining after, I think, 4 years, or in year 4. I mean, how has that gone? Because I mean, there have been reports that it hasn't been as successful so far as you would have liked. I mean, how have sales been, and how realistic was that ambition?
It's a very, very, very ambitious project. We've had many changes. We've hit many walls, and we've had to turn left and right. It's still going, and we're still making progress, and it will still work. I've no doubt it'll work. It's working. It just hasn't got the volume, but it's working.
One thing that it relied upon, I suppose, was goodwill towards the team. Do you not fear now that will have evaporated?
Of course I do. Yeah, and this is why I'm talking to you now. I'm telling the truth. I'm not lying. I have nothing to lie about. I don't need to lie. This isn't my business. It's supposed to be my hobby. I'm not lying for the betterment of myself. I'm telling you the absolute truth. Every word I've told you is the truth. I have documents, email traffic, everything to support every single thing I've just said to you. So I'm telling the truth. I'm just telling you how it is. Others, because they're still in the business, will protect their interests by denying we didn't do that. That's inaccurate. Let them say what they want to say. I know I'll sleep tonight because I've just told the truth. Exactly what I've said to you is what's happened.
Now live on the telephone from London, Richard Moore. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Lionel. Where are we, Lionel?
Well, I'm. You're preparing to come out to the Vuelta, and I'm in the mountains somewhere, getting quite remote, with a fairly long drive ahead of me over some mountains. It's nearly 8 p.m. and it's still 37 degrees.
It's not that in London, I can tell you. Lionel, obviously I'm desperate to get on the podcast. Can't wait till Monday. So after hearing the Rick Delaney, his version of events, I suppose, of what's happened to lead to this sorry pass where the team has folded mid-season, and we heard there how raw that has been and emotional he is. It's obviously been a difficult week. A lot of anger for Rick Delaney. I've seen a lot of anger on social media. I think that came across in some of the things he said there as well. That he's seen that too. I mean, I think the people who have every right to be angry are the riders and staff if he doesn't fulfil the promises he's made to them in terms of the contracts that they've signed. And he said in the interview there that he would honour those contracts. So we'll keep tabs on that, shall we? It's worth mentioning that we have an audio diary coming up, don't we?
We do, yes. Well, the idea originally was that Conor Dunn would keep an audio diary at the Tour of Britain. Conor Dunn is the Irish road race champion, of course, and should have been lining up on the start line at the weekend for Aqua Blue Sport. Obviously isn't now. However, he's going cycle touring with his teammate Larry Warbass, and they're going to keep a diary from that instead, and I think reflect on and give their side of the story and their version of events, of how it all unravelled for Aqua Blue over the last week.
I think there are a few interesting things just to say briefly about the what we heard there from Rick Delaney. Conor Dunn and Larry Warbass, their thoughts will be interesting. I think within the team, I think there's it's a complicated situation. I don't think that everybody on the team blames Rick Delaney. I think that there will be riders out of contract, as he said there, at the end of the year. I think that would have been the case regardless of whether the team had carried on or not. 2 years into the life of a new team, you do see a lot of riders moving on because most of them sign 2-year contracts when the team starts. So there would have been a natural sort of turnover anyway, and there will be riders who would have been out of contract anyway, I think, if the team had carried on. But I think it was a perfect storm here of problems. Problems with their equipment, obviously, lack of race invites, struggled to make the online retail business, which was so fundamental to the team's survival, a success. And I don't think that has worked out so far. Interesting to hear Rick Delaney say that will carry on. Aqua Blue have got a bit of flack this year for complaining, or Rick Delaney complaining about not getting race invites. They don't have any right to be automatically invited to races on the basis of their innovative business model. That's something that's rubbed a few people up the wrong way. But what I did agree with entirely was his point about the very opaque sort of nature of the current system as regards getting race invites. What do you have to do, basically, if you're a Pro Conti team? And there are 27 registered Pro Continental teams this year with the UCI. That's a lot of teams competing for spaces in the big races. What is the system for gaining entry to those races? If there was some transparency about that, that would help everybody, I think. And I think it's a point Daniel made in the podcast the other night. Very difficult for Pro Continental teams, particularly a Pro Continental team in Ireland, to get into some of these big races, and especially when they don't know what they have to do to get into them. We should say as well that Rick Delaney made some very serious allegations about, in particular, their equipment sponsor 3T, and also the Sniper Cycling, the organisation that they were in talks with to acquire. We put a couple of questions to them based on what Rick Delaney said. We asked 3T if they were aware of the problems with the bikes and what steps that they took to address those issues. We had a response from Gerard Vroomen from 3T who said, every team has technical issues, that's pro cycling, and when they happen, you deal with it. That's how I've done it for 15 years, although with some teams it's a lot easier than with others. Some are just a lot more organised. We found that proper maintenance solves a lot of the issues, and we had a third-party company, which a lot of bike suppliers use, visit the team to do a proper re-greasing of components, checking of bearings, etc. We also asked 3T whether the team was threatened with legal action if they didn't use the bikes. Actually, quite the opposite, said Gerard. They announced they would merge with Sniper, and then when that was refuted, Rick personally stated in the media that it would happen anyway in a few days. Of course, that's an issue when you put two teams together where both have a bike supplier already. In light of the takeover and a bigger bike sponsor being available to them, we said let's avoid any legal mess and end the sponsorship at the end of 2018 without any financial compensation, only the return of the supplied products. This was something that Rick Delaney couldn't really talk about in our interview, the rumours that there was a threat of legal action if they rode without the 3T bikes. Put one question to Sniper really concerning that announcement that Aqua Blue had acquired Sniper Cycling and you know, Wout van Aert, their most prized possession, prized rider. We asked about the press release and whether it had been approved by Sniper before being released. This is clearly incorrect, said the team. We were both working on a press release in anticipation of a possible announcement because we want to be well prepared, but we never agreed on their version of the press release, and certainly not on the premature publication of it, because at that time there was nothing to be confirmed yet. There was no final agreement, and there has never been one. If we had indeed approved their press release, we wouldn't have asked to remove it again, and we wouldn't have to deny it in our own statement later that day. So a royal mess, really, Lionel. And I don't know if for you the Rick Delaney version of events shed any more light on it.
Well, I think that it's interesting. Two things. One, the riders are always in a horrible position when these kind of things happen, because they know that if they speak out, if they say anything that upsets the team's hierarchy or owners, they may struggle to get paid up to the end of the year, and they will all have mortgages or rent to pay and lives to finance. And so while on the one hand the absence of any direct criticism of Rick Delaney from the riders, it could be explained by that, on the other I get the sense that the riders were not terribly happy with how the situation with the bikes had worked out this year, and that it was a much more complicated story than just a team folding at short notice. Whether it's any comfort to the riders that Rick Delaney has made these effectively on the record guarantees that he will not just pay them up to the end of the year, but anyone who had a contract for the team for 2019, he would also honour those contracts if the riders don't get an alternative arrangement with another team. Whether that comforts the riders or not, I don't know, but that's something that, having said it, he should be held to, and hopefully he will honour those words and make sure that the commitments that were made to the riders are fulfilled, even if at the end of the day, the riders, yes, they want to be paid, of course, but they want to be racing their bikes, and it does seem very unfortunate that somehow they couldn't have all sorted this out one way or the other to enable the riders to do the Tour of Britain, especially in light of Gerard Vroomen's statement there saying that they would have a clean break at the end of 2018. I mean, it doesn't seem from the outside like there's been a sort of a cohesive negotiation to prioritise the riders' best interests.
It was ever thus, Lionel, and unfortunately this is a fairly common occurrence in cycling. It is unstable, teams are unstable, and Aqua Blue Sport has gone to the wall less than 2 years into their life, which is very, very, very sad. And especially when we're at the Vuelta. Well, you're at the Vuelta, I'm on my way to the Vuelta, and it was at that race last year that really generated a lot of goodwill, rode really well, very aggressively. Connor Dunn was a great story. They had a stage win. Their bus was set on fire one night, and other teams kind of rallied to help them. They were a team that did generate goodwill and attracted a lot of fans. And so it's a very sad ending to that story. But should we leave it there? You've got a long drive. I'm sure there'll be more to come out from this story. And that episode that you mentioned with Connor Dunn and Larry Warbass will be we'll play some of that in the regular episode, I think, but it's our Friends of the Podcast special. It will be released in the next couple of weeks.
Well, yes, you're right, Rich. I'd better get on the road. I've got quite a lot of driving ahead of me, and I'm handing over the podcast baton to you on Sunday night. I'll tell you what, I'll leave the recorder in Madrid airport for you to collect on Monday morning. That's how it works, isn't it?
Yes, just leave the recorder somewhere in Madrid airport, Lionel, and I'm sure I'll find it. Just to add to what we were saying about this special episode with Connor Dunn and Larry Warbass, to show how sort of ruthless and fast-moving professional cycling is. No sooner had the announcement come about the end of the team, which came just after you had teased people with the story that we were having an Aqua Blue rider keep an audio diary at the Tour of Britain. Then we had the offer of a replacement audio diary from another team that will be riding the Tour of Britain. So look out for that. But things do move very quickly in professional cycling.
It's the ultimate in capitalism, isn't it? One
dog eat dog.
Yeah, one person's misfortune is an opportunity for somebody else, and it's always been that way. And it does bring it home to you, I guess.
It's nice that we will have an insight into the Tour of Britain, which is a race we can't unfortunately cover ourselves because of the Vuelta. So that's good. And friends of the podcast will get to hear that also in the next couple of weeks. So happy driving, Lionel. Bon route.
Thank you very much, Rich.